Some YouTube vloggers believe that the thugs, the gangsters, D-boys, and street niggas are the last real men in the black community. I mean, they romanticize this stuff like the thug life, the hoodlums, are like the untapped potential warriors that would come and uplift the black community only if they had the training and guidance to do so, right? That thought process is real disconcerting, being that, that the black community looks to the very men that cause most of the dysfunction and degradation in the black community, and how they believe that these sociopaths would be the alleged saviors of the black community. Why would they do this? This is complete nonsense and faulty logic. Most street niggas and social miscreants are pretty much the cause of the black social condition that we see in most inner cities today. They're definitely not the solution. Let's think about it. In the past 50 years that these black criminals and gang members have been pretty much exploiting and terrorizing the black communities throughout the U.S. and even globally. Let's think about it. What essential resources and businesses have these people developed that were advantageous to black people's overall survival? Really, think about that. These reprobates do not even manufacture the sophisticated weapons and firearms that they use to terrorize the black communities globally, okay? These people are essentially inept and willing consumers of weapons of their own destruction. It's alleged that other organized crime syndicates, such as like the Don Corleone and the Godfather, which are mostly fictional characters, they were able to leverage their profits and pay off politicians to develop legitimate businesses, but in the black case, this criminal enterprise has equaled more debauchery and dysfunction. I hate to say it, but Brooklyn Blue was kind of right in the fact that a lot of black men haven't even been successful in their criminal enterprises. This is just fact. Please name me the black Fortune 500 company started by a drug dealer, kingpin, or a hustler, or whatever you want to call him, pimp, whatever. Black criminal enterprises have been an abject failure for the black community, period. There's been a lot of drug dealing as well as pimping of black women, but no safe communities, no banks, no food stores or manufacturing companies have been built by black criminals for the benefit of the black community. Where does this exist? If you know, please let me know in the comment box below. On average, black drug dealers have been epic failures, and here's why. Most black criminals are not smart enough to build genuine black power. They're just not. And you ask me why. Okay, let's talk about the education level of prisoners. When criminals are incarcerated and tested for intelligence, they score at the bottom of most intelligent quotients, which is IQ. Black and Hispanic state prison inmates had the lowest levels of educational attainment. 53% of Hispanics and 44% of black inmates had not graduated from high school or earned a GED, which is a general equivalency diploma. Moreover, prisoners were far more likely than the national population to perform in the lowest literacy on each of the 3 literacy scales. That is the cognitive literacy, the quantitative literacy, and overall reading comprehension. Locked up and locked out, an educational perspective on the U.S. prison population. Most federal and state prison inmates have mental illnesses and substance abuse addictions. And for all the naysayers, listen, don't take my report for it. Do your own research. It's on page 10 in the ets.org media research PDF, okay? Check it out. It's in the description box. A 2004 survey by the U.S. Department of Justice estimated that about 70% of state and 64% of federal prisoners regularly use drugs prior to their incarceration. The study also shows that 1 in 4 violent offenders in state prison committed their first offense under the influence of drugs. And if you don't believe me, there was a 144-page report released by CASA Columbia, which is CASA at Columbia University. They basically revealed that alcohol and other drugs were significant factors in all crimes almost. Okay, in 2006, alcohol and other drugs were involved in these inmate offenses. 78% of all of the violent crimes, 83% of property crimes, 77% of public order, immigration, or weapon offenses, and probation/parole violations. According to the Center of Addiction.org, 65% of all U.S. inmates meet medical criteria for substance abuse addiction. Also, many inmates have untreated mental illnesses as well. It's an estimate that 56% of state prisoners, 45% of federal prisoners, and 64% of jail inmates have mental health problems. And that is sourced by the Processing and Treatment of Mentally Ill Persons in the Criminal Justice System, a scan of practice and background analysis PDF Urban Institute on March 2015, if you want to look that up. Okay, let's add a little bit more evidence to your thug saviors that you think are going to come back and magically save the black community. Okay, most prison inmates are either illiterate or functionally illiterate. 75% of inmates are illiterate. 85% of all juveniles who come into contact with the juvenile court system are functionally illiterate. So are 60% of all prison inmates. Other research suggests that 75% of inmates are illiterate at the 12th grade level and 19% are completely illiterate. Okay, so what is the definition of illiterate? Cannot read or write in any capacity. What is the definition of functionally illiterate? Can read and possibly write simple sentences with limited vocabulary, but cannot read or write well enough to deal with the everyday requirements of life in a modern society. So 75% of inmates are illiterate, and these are the people you think are going to save the black community? Come on, dude. And you know me, I love receipts, so check in the description box for The Invisible Children written by Ruben Rosario and invisiblechildren.org link, okay? And now that I'm on the roll, I really want to drop some more of these good, solid facts on you. You know what I mean? This is not my opinion. This is not, I don't even like saying this stuff. Like this is just true, hardcore facts. That's all it is. So in addition, persons with low IQs are likely to end up incarcerated, plain and simple. I mean, people with lower than average IQ between 75 and 89 are more likely to drop out of school, go to jail, and live in poverty. You know, what's even more troublesome is the fact that people with the IQ range of 75 and 89 are like 88 times more likely to drop out of school, 7 times more likely to end up in prison, and 5 times more likely to live in poverty when you juxtapose that to the people with IQs over 110. And that was brought to you by the Mega Foundation. And of course, the link is in the description box. Listen, I'm just giving you the raw facts. You could deal with this the way you want to deal with it. But this is from the businessinsider.com. These are the facts. Okay, so expecting a group of marginally literate, mentally ill, chemically addicted, low IQ men to save the black community is ridiculous. I mean, you know, a lot of this stuff sounds good in hashtags. You know, a lot of this stuff sounds good in these big speeches and they want to, you know, make people feel good. But the reality of this stuff is very, very sobering, to say the least. For example, we got the washed up former drug kingpin, Mr. Frank Lucas. Everybody talks about, from Harlem, the drug dealer. I mean, he was a relatively unknown urban legend until he was played by Denzel Washington in the movie American Gangster. I mean, he made most of his money basically transporting heroin in the coffins of dead American soldiers from the Vietnam War. I mean, today in real life, he's 86 years old, essentially broke and living off supplemental Social Security income. Although glamorized as suave and cunning in the movie played by Denzel Washington, Frank Lucas was actually illiterate, vicious and violent. I mean, described by the New York State District Judge Sterling Johnson, who sentenced Lucas to 70 years in prison. Furthermore, Frank Lucas fathered like 7 children by 5 different women who all became wards of the state and were cared for by the New York State taxpayers. How about the Jamaican drug lord Christopher Dudas Cokes? He was the former leader of the violent drug gang Shower Posse that terrorized Tivoli Gardens in West Kingston, while exporting cocaine to the United States, is now serving 23 years in an American federal prison for racketeering and drug trafficking. During his arrest, 73 people had been killed in clashes between the Jamaican security forces and the Shower Posse gang. And during trial, the federal prosecutors presented documents depicting Coke as willing to commit brutal acts of violence to support his drug empire and implicating him in at least 5 murders. In one, he allegedly dismembered the victim with a chainsaw for stealing drugs from him. Cokes never finished high school and was a cocaine abuser himself. You see these correlations? You have to pay attention to these correlations now. How about the Nigerian drug kingpin, Philip Sofor? He also called himself the Lion of Alberton. He was sentenced for 81 years in the Benoni Magistrates Court in South Africa for drug trafficking and racketeering. Safar arrived in South Africa illegally from Nigeria in 2002 and began dealing drugs from his cell phone shop he owned in Alberton North, becoming one of Johannesburg's biggest drug dealers. He basically targeted the pupils at the Parkland High School near his cell phone shop. The South African magistrate Zweli Zakwe said that he had to really weigh the society's need for retribution and the offender's likelihood of rehabilitation. The judge ultimately concluded that Safar was a danger to society. And yes, Safar was a high school dropout who never finished his O-level exams in Nigeria. Thugs are fatally wounded in the triage of life. Thugs are the soldiers of life with fatal wounds. Their lifestyles and life choices are antisocial and dangerous. The men of thug life are the men who typically won't make it out of the competitive social battlefields to achieve long-term financial success. Because of their hazardous and high-risk lifestyles that many times include criminality and violence, they generally have marginal labor and entrepreneurial skills, and they tend to be failures as even criminals. They tend to concentrate on low-end, low-pay crimes like mugging, convenience store robbery, and selling illegal drugs to poor people. They usually are at the bottom of the drug trade totem pole and are usually first to get busted by law enforcement. Death in prison is where their lifestyles usually end up. So no, thugs cannot save the black community. On average, they're just simply not smart enough to do it. All right, peace.